Hey, everybody. How you doing, Brian?
How you doing?
Good, very good. So,
I'm good. You asked me a question and I asked it right back.
nice.
I'm doing great.
Excellent. So as people come in, welcome everybody. Let us know where you are watching from. People start coming in. And for those who are watching on Facebook, just a reminder to please give StreamYard permission to show your name and profile pic, so I will be able to credit you when you comment or ask questions. All you do is underneath the live, scroll down a little bit till you see StreamYard.com/Facebook link. Click that, give permissions, jump on back. Thank you. And so don't be shy. Let us know where you're watching from, everybody.
Well, Sarah.
There we go. Sarah, she's in Florida.
Where in Florida?
Tampa Bay area, I think it is.
Oh, Tampa. Okay, so
I know she runs a Tampa Bay Adobe user group.
Okay. Yeah, I'm in Southeast Florida in Palm Beach.
Excellent. And we got Barbara from Albuquerque. She's on Facebook today.
Okay, Edgewater.
Edgewater.
Mm-hmm.
New Smyrna Beach.
South Africa.
Someone says love. We got someone from the UK, Austin, Texas, from South Africa. Good to see you here. Zosh, good to see you here from Vancouver Island. Lance from Hamilton, New Zealand on YouTube. Thank you. Yes, as Sarah said, give her credit. She runs the Tampa Adobe user group. And I've done some lives with Sarah, which I will do again. It's always a pleasure.
Very cool.
So before we jump on in, did you want to just let people know what we're going over today, Brian?
Sure. Yeah, this is a fun one because I feel like whenever I do this, and I've done this a few times, where this all happened, Andrew, when I was on Matt Kloskowski's podcast last year at some point, and we were talking about the future of Lightroom. And Matt asked me my prediction for when I think Lightroom Classic will go away. And he gave me multiple choice. He's like, do you think it'll be within 2 to 3 years? And I said, no. Then he asked within 5 years, and I said, yes. And he said he thinks within 10 years. Now, that spawned, it was pretty wild, the kind of emails and messages that I got about it. And I stand by it. I fully stand by it. And the reason why I first brought it up, why we even had that podcast episode, was because that was around right after Adobe Max last October, when they introduced local browsing in Lightroom. And so I saw that as one of the first kind of signs that that the future of Lightroom is on their kind of desktop cloud-based ecosystem. So I guess one of the things, and so from that, when people would start messaging me, Andrew, I saw there was a lot of misunderstandings, a lot of kind of misconceptions. And also, I wanted to clarify that I don't think that Lightroom Classic will just go away in 5 years. Not at all. Like Lightroom 6, for those of you who don't even remember, Lightroom 6 was the last version of Lightroom you were able to buy as a standalone application. That just officially went away, I think, in January. And Adobe announced that in 2017. That was going to start going away. Like, it's been a long time. So,
Right.
So yeah, like what I wanted to do in this live stream was to, I don't know, kind of address some of the most common misconceptions and myths. And I've written about this on my website. I've done videos about it, and I'm not trying to convince anyone. Like, if you're a Lightroom Classic user and you just have no desire to switch to Lightroom, that's all good. I'm not saying that you have to. I think eventually, and when I say eventually, I'm talking about years from now, that's going to be a different story. I really do think Adobe is going to, at some point, it just makes sense. Like, Andrew, imagine you're Adobe. You don't become successful by making poor decisions. And here we have a company that has two versions of an app that does effectively the same thing. And I've worked at software. I've worked at On One. I've worked at Google. I've worked I did a 6-month contract with Skylum.
Mm-hmm.
So I understand kind of like how software companies work. And one thing you can't do is be inefficient with your resources and revenue. So here you have a team that manages Lightroom, and then you have a team that manages Lightroom Classic. And when I mean a team, I'm talking about everyone from the developers, project managers, marketing,
Right.
customer support, QA. And it's also difficult to have to make sure that both apps have the same feature sets, that they kind of play together nicely, because Lightroom Classic does have limited syncing to the cloud. All of this is to say, this is a very roundabout answer to a simple question. I just want to kind of cover some of the things that I think would help someone get a better idea of Lightroom. And when I say, I will specifically call Lightroom Classic. If I say Lightroom, I'm talking about the new version of Lightroom, because that's another point of confusion. So, yeah.
Right. Excellent. So shall I share your screen and we jump on in and start showing some of the different things? And then, of course, everyone watching, feel free to ask questions.
Yes. Please ask questions. Be kind. Like, we're all friends here, and this isn't like this isn't like tragic news. This is just, it's a photo editing app. So just know that we can be all friends here. So,
and if they are mean or nasty, I do not showcase their question or comment.
There you go.
I have the power.
So I see here, though, I saw Lance says, what do you say? Something about it went away. Yeah, Lightroom Mobile and Lightroom Classic are not the same. That's correct. That's totally, absolutely.
Yeah, and he was saying it was replaced with a subscription version, and then he just says he prefers Lightroom Classic. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, the subscription version of Lightroom that was around when Adobe released Creative Cloud.
Sure. And then Carrie says, I am very new to all this. I've tried Lightroom, but don't fully understand how to use it. So you're going to get a good taste of it today.
Absolutely. So let's kind of, I have here, you can see my desktop, and this is Lightroom. So this is the quote unquote newer version of Lightroom. And then this is Lightroom Classic. Lightroom Classic was first released, I think, in 2007. And Lightroom was released a decade later in 2017. So let's just start with the first and probably biggest misconception or misunderstanding with Lightroom. And I preface that by saying that this misconception is now kind of in place since last October with Adobe Max.
Right.
Last October, Adobe updated the Lightroom, this version of Lightroom here, with one of the most fundamental and biggest updates since this app was released. And it's this right there, this local tab. Before October of last year, if you used Lightroom, if you imported your photos into Lightroom, yes, you would have to, whenever you imported them, they would be synced to the cloud. And based on the subscription plan that you have with Adobe, you either had 20 gigabytes of storage, 100 gigabytes of storage, a terabyte of storage, or you could pay for more than that. Now, just to show you in full kind of transparency, I have 10 terabytes of storage total with the Creative Cloud, and I'm syncing my entire library, which currently takes 5.1 terabytes. And I am actively working on reducing that by deleting older photos or photos that just don't need to exist. Still, the reason why I show that is because I want to show you that I kind of put my money where my mouth is. Like, I actually use this for my photos. This is the only version of Lightroom I use.
Can I ask a couple quick questions?
Yes, of course.
So so first is for the 10 terabyte, you must obviously pay for extra storage like that, right? That doesn't come with the regular subscription to your Lightroom, right?
Right. It depends on, so there's a photography plan that you can get for 20 bucks a month in the US that gives you access to Lightroom, Lightroom Mobile, Lightroom Classic, and Photoshop, and 1 terabyte of storage. There are other versions of the Lightroom plan that will give you 1 terabyte, but it'll only include Lightroom and not Lightroom Classic or Photoshop. For every terabyte that you add on, there's a certain rate that Adobe charges that you have to pay per month.
Okay. And then the other question was, and forgive me if I'm jumping to something that you're going to go over already, but one
Sure.
thing I was just curious about is in the top left, I see cloud, I see local. Could you decide to work on this version of Lightroom, but just purely work local and not?
Exactly.
Okay.
Yes, this is the biggest change because a lot of photographers, rightfully so, when this version of Lightroom came out in 2017, they were like, wait a second, I don't want to have to sync my entire library to the cloud. I don't have enough storage, or bandwidth is a limitation where I live, or any number of factors. And it was totally legitimate. So what Adobe did was they implemented local. And local is the easiest way to describe local. It's as if Adobe took Bridge and kind of smushed it into Lightroom. So this is still a 1.0, version 1.0 of local, but you have a fully fledged file browser. So I can access any folder on my computer. I can go here. So you can see on my desktop, there is this folder here called Columbia River Gorge with a bunch of raw files. These are all Sony raw files. And I browse to it, and here are all of the photos. Now, what's cool is it's not just a file browser, because I can double click and I can go to the edit panel here, and I have access to the entire editing panel that you basically have in Lightroom Classic and the cloud version. There are a few small things that require cloud. I can show you that in a minute, but you can do everything. I can go ahead and select multiple photos and then go to photo merge, and I can merge to, and this isn't an HDR bracket, but I can do an HDR merge. I can do a pano merge. Like actually here, this is I believe right here.
And so to clarify,
Yes.
just to make sure that people are, clear,
Mhm.
with this local version, you are, like you said, like Bridge, you can go out and access any folders and then
Any
create
drive.
favorites,
Yeah.
and you do not have to do an import.
No.
You just
No,
access. Right.
Yeah, so that's a really great point, Andrew. So Lightroom Classic, which I have over here, is pretty much always local. Like everything that you do in terms of managing the photo organization, your photo editing, and your exporting, for the most part, are all done locally. The
Right.
key difference between local in Lightroom Classic and local in this local tab of Lightroom is that local in Lightroom does not require catalogs at all, which is a massive, massive benefit, in my opinion,
Right.
for a few reasons. First, a catalog is just an overglorified database, which means that as you add more records to it, first, it's going to slow down because a database is just a table of records. The more photos you add to it, the more metadata it has to keep track of, the slower it gets. Also, the database, your catalog, is prone to being corrupted. I've seen more than my fair share of posts on social media from people who are freaking out because their Lightroom catalog got corrupted. That's just the nature of any database. It can get corrupted, and if you didn't back it up, it's not going to be good news for you. However,
SOL.
you are SOL. I mean, there is no kinder way to say it, and I'm not trying to scare anyone. It's just the reality. So you might ask, well, oh, go ahead.
Sorry to interrupt. I was going to say, Lance has a couple good questions as well.
Yeah, really quickly, let me just kind of explain how
Sure.
Lightroom works around it.
Yeah.
The way Lightroom handles, I mentioned how Lightroom Classic keeps track of your edit history in the catalog. With Lightroom, watch this. I'm going to open up. I have this photo right here. Let's see, 03137, which is down here. Let's go to the info view. 03137. So this photo, 03137, corresponds to this. Watch what happens if I open up the editor and I just start making an edit. So I just adjusted the exposure. What will happen? Actually, I have to go to grid to commit the edit.
Okay.
You see what happens right there? Now there is an XMP file. The XMP file is the sidecar file for a raw file. I have the changes are already here. As soon as you make the changes, they're written to the XMP.
Right.
And then you might ask, well, what about a JPEG? With JPEGs, as soon as you make your changes and you close out of the editing session, and the way you close out of an editing session is you make your edit and then you either press G to go to grid view or you arrow over to another photo. As soon as you do that, Lightroom writes that information in the metadata of the JPEG. It's brilliant in the header of the JPEG. So long story short, your edits are written pretty much real time once you complete your edit session without having to deal with the catalog. So that gets around the whole catalog structure. So you said that Lance had questions. So let's
Yeah, they're interconnected to where you are now. So it's great. So
yeah.
So does Lightroom import? So we just went over that. Lightroom, the other version of Lightroom does not import as such, but is there a way to convert RAWs to DNG like in Lightroom Classic? Like in
Sort
Lightroom
of.
Classic, when you import, you can do that. But is there a way you can do that manually in this version of Lightroom?
Right. So the first important point to make is, at least with local, if we're just talking about local here, there is no concept of import. You just browse to the folder with your photos and they just appear here. And then you double click on it and you start editing. So there is no import functionality to do that. However, let's just say you want your photos to be DNG.
Right.
You would have to select them and then you could share, basically go to your custom settings here and then export here as a DNG.
Oh,
and then a DNG will be created. But to answer the question, it's a good question. Even with cloud, if you're uploading or syncing your photos to the cloud, there is no functionality currently to convert. Basically, you will just add photos, and you would, it won't upload these because they're already in the cloud, but it won't give you the opportunity to convert it to a DNG file. You'd have to export it.
Right. So it sounds like you would have to export as DNG, then basically go back and then delete the original RAWs if you don't want them.
That's correct.
And then it works the same way as Lightroom Classic, whereas if you delete anything in this, it will basically show a prompt that asks you if you want to remove from Lightroom or delete from disk, correct?
No. If you're in local, this is a file browser. So if I go here and I right click and I go to delete one photo, it's going to move it to the recycle bin because there's no catalog. When in the Lightroom Classic, what you're saying is if I go here and I hit delete, because this is being tracked in a catalog, it's asking you, okay, do you just want to remove it from the catalog and keep the file, or do you actually want to get rid of it? There's no catalog here, so there's nothing to remove.
Okay, good. So Lance also says, I do not see collections in Lightroom like in Lightroom Classic.
And he is correct. So, well, okay. If we're talking about collections in the local browse, that's because it's, like I mentioned, it's just a file browser. So it's going to show you your folders and your subfolders, and that's it. Cloud, though, which is what I use primarily, Lance is correct. Lightroom does not currently have collections support. It does have albums, and an album is effectively the exact same function. It serves the same function as a collection. What it doesn't have, and what I have begged Adobe for a very long time, and you and I, Andrew, work very closely with Adobe, and we'll leave it at that. But I've brought this up numerous times where I would love smart collections. So in Lightroom Classic, a smart collection, if I click here, is basically a collection that has parameters. So I can say, I want this smart collection to show me everything with 4 stars and with, say, a label color of yellow. And so as I add photos here, if I go here and I make this 4 stars and I give it a yellow rating, well, then that smart collection updates with that information. I would love that functionality in Lightroom, but that is one of the I would say, legitimate things that is currently not in Lightroom, but I do hope we see it.
Right. And sounds like Lance doesn't like the the option of having to export. So he's saying, so I
to
would
convert to
use
DNG.
I would have to
Yeah,
convert.
he would use
to
DNG converter. Exactly. Yes. And I get it. I get it. Here's a thing, Lance and Andrew. I don't see Adobe basically where they're going to just make Lightroom Classic into Lightroom. Like, it's not going to be a 1-for-1. What you're seeing is kind of what Adobe's vision is for Lightroom, and it's evolving for sure. Like, it's every update is going to get new functionality. Some of these things, like converting to DNG on import, that's such a specific thing. And I would challenge Lance on that I cannot imagine that there are a large number of people, or let me rephrase, I would be willing to bet that there are far more people who would rather have a smart collection functionality, or in this case, Smart Album, than the ability to convert to DNG on import. Adobe kind of knows this, and they do a lot of research on that, and they stack rank which features will provide the biggest bang for the buck. So yeah.
Now, Lance also says I use the color tagging, picking, and starring to sort multi-day shots. But
Yeah.
it looks like you have that capability in this version of Lightroom anyways, right?
You have 2 of 3. In Lightroom Classic, you have 3 methods of sorting or filtering or rating. You have stars, you have color, and you have pick flag. In Lightroom, you have pick flags and stars, but there is no color label. Right. So I also don't know that's a huge prayer. Many people
could come any day anyways, right?
It could, absolutely. I can't imagine it's a very difficult thing to add, but I'm not a Lightroom product manager, or a developer, so I don't know. But I know people have brought that up, that the color labels is an important thing for them. So absolutely.
So Sarah says, I'm not a huge user of Lightroom, so this might be a really weird question. How do you think Adobe will incorporate AI into this software, or not at all?
They already have.
I was going to say, right?
So AI, there are a few kind of flavors of AI in Lightroom and in Lightroom Classic, for what it's worth. The first and most obvious one is, let's go here really quickly. I want to find an image with like a clear sky, something like this one. Actually, this one. So the first implementation of AI is if you go into develop and then you go to masking. So again, this is Lightroom Classic. When you do one of these 3 options, these are AI powered adaptive masks. So I click on sky. There's an AI model that looks at the image and it looks for the sky and it creates the selection. So AI is already here. Thank you, Sarah. I appreciate the kind words. Same thing in Lightroom. There's that same adaptive masking that you can use. Let me find if I have in this folder an image with a sky, something like that one. If I go to the masking panel, you can see, even though this is a local photo, I can click on sky and Lightroom detects the sky. So same functionality. Where this gets infinitely cooler, in my opinion, is when you sync to the cloud. So this function that I'm about to show you is only available in the cloud. So let's say I go to all photos and I type in here the word waterfall. Oh, you see this? Oh, this is a bug that I have. Let me quit out of Lightroom and relaunch really quickly. This is a bug that has been reported. Sometimes when I type in the Omni bar at the top, it doesn't recognize my keyboard shortcuts. So what I'm doing is I'm going to all of my photos, which you can see there are 133,467 photos. And so let me just see. There we go. I'm going to type in up here the word waterfall. So I'm just typing a word. This word is, it's not tagged in any of my photos. I don't have, I'm just typing the word waterfall. So the question about AI, Adobe Sensei goes through my library and it looks at my photos and it's showing me all of my photos of waterfalls. I didn't tag these. I don't, these are just photos that it shows as waterfall. Let's say I close out and I do, let's think.
Any portraits or something? Or
Well, so it does have a people view. So that's
Right.
the other thing. So it'll identify people. But Lightroom Classic has a similar function. I'm trying to show something like, I'm trying to think, hot air balloon. Let's see what it does here. So there you go. I mean, I can tell you for a fact, these photos are not tagged with the word hot air balloon. So a lot of times people will be like, oh, I need my keyword support, or I need hierarchical keywords. And to a degree, I get that. Like if you have to keyword with if you're a bird photographer and you want a keyword with a very specific, classification of a bird, I get that. Fortunately, Lightroom does have keyword support. It's just not hierarchical. But this to me is far more beneficial. Like if I want to do a search for, point is, I don't want to get too far. The point is I can type the word bird.
And this only works in the cloud version as opposed to local for this kind of AI
Yes.
search and find. Yeah.
Yes. So if you go into local here, you can see here how I did the search for bird and it's just showing me photos of birds in my library.
Sure.
But if I go to local, your search functionality is limited to things like metadata. So I can say like ISO equals, it should do that. Let me see here. Because if I do like waterfall, you can see how it doesn't recognize it. It needs to go. But you could filter. Usually if I type in, it should autocorrect. Usually if I type ISO, for example, it'll give me the option to filter. But you can filter by these other things here, like the type of camera you're using. You can filter by stars. So show me all images with 4 stars. But it's much more limited compared to cloud. Like if I go to cloud here, usually when I go here, if I want to search for like a high ISO photo, yeah. So, okay, this is also only for cloud, but here I can show me all photos that have high ISO. And so if I'm looking for a photo that I want to do like a noise reduction demo, I just go here. I know these are high ISO photos. And if I click on one, this was, let's see, ISO 2000. So it should have, you could see how much noise it has. So cloud does have some functionality that local doesn't. But when I say some, I mean just a few things.
And I have a question for the cloud version of this. Can you also just have certain folders that are
Great question, Andrew. What a layup. I love it. Yes. This is a really
teamwork here.
Teamwork makes the dream work. So what Andrew asks is, all right, cool. I've got all these photos on my hard drive. And again, you can access internal and external drive. So this is an external drive. You can see the icon shows it's an external drive there. And so I can access any external drive. But let's say you can pick and choose. There are 3 ways you can get photos from local to the cloud. You can either select an individual photo like this, and then you see this button here that says copy one photo to the cloud. And I'm going to just put a little pin in the word copy. This is a critical word. You can either do that. I can select multiple photos, and then you'll see now it says copy 4 photos. Or I can take an entire folder and say copy to cloud. So you can, when you do that, what it's going to do, this is important to know, it will take the original full resolution photo and it'll upload it to your Adobe Creative Cloud account, and it will it will reduce however much the file size is from your Adobe Creative Cloud quota. When you do that, these photos will be in the cloud. But I'm really glad you brought this up. The word copy is very explicit. It's not, notice how it doesn't say sync. So if I were to copy this photo to the cloud, it would do exactly that. There would be a second copy of this photo in the cloud. What does that mean? Well, if I take this, if I go to this photo and I go to the cloud version of it and I make some edits, those edits will not sync
Right.
to the desktop, to your local copy. The way that I kind of tell people to look at this is, go ahead, if you want to copy whatever photos to the cloud, then think of those that cloud copy as that's your gospel copy. That is the copy you should be working on. And the local version, you can back up, you can delete them. You don't need them anymore because they are fully backed up in Adobe Cloud. So, because that's what trips a lot of people up, Andrew, is I've gotten messages about like, oh, I've copied it to the cloud, and then I go to the cloud and I make an edit, and I don't see the edit in a local. And so I have to explain that it's not a sync. When you say syncing, that means that anything you do on either side, technically it's called asynchronous syncing. So no matter which copy you edit, it'll kind of reconcile.
So
this does not. Go ahead.
I was gonna say, so therefore, if you have this on, say, your desktop computer, and you're working on the regular Lightroom in the cloud, and then you have a laptop and you're going on a trip to, Europe or, wherever, and you download the regular Lightroom, that the minute that you connect your cloud account, it should populate all these folders for you, and you can work on them while you're in France or Spain or whatever, right?
They will be available on another computer. They will be available on your smartphone, Android or iOS, on your tablet, and via the web. I don't know how many.
Your account, your Creative
It's all your account.
Yep, cool.
Yeah, like I don't know how many people know that there is a almost fully functional version of Lightroom that you can access in a web browser. I shared a video of this last week, or no, a couple weeks ago. It's wild. Like you can just go click here and you see this little Lightroom web, or you could just go to lightroom.adobe.com. It's a fully, let's see. I'll bring that tab into this screen. Let me go here really quick. I'll just show it to you super quickly.
So if you go to Lightroom web and it has all your files just like it would if you had the regular Lightroom, because it's all cloud based. So whatever you do on Lightroom web to say Columbia River Gorge photo number 7, that would be the same photo you'd see when you go back to your desktop computer, because it's still just that same cloud kind of catalog.
Correct.
It's not a catalog, it's more.
It's your library. It's your cloud library.
It's a better word, yeah.
But it will not be, you will not see those updates or those edits in the local version of
only cloud.
Only cloud.
Yep.
Yeah.
So then Sarah has a question, and there are no silly questions, Sarah. She says another silly question.
They're just silly people.
That's right. Yeah. Such as me. Another silly question. Will this work for, say, .psd, InDesign files, etc., where it can find photos with keywords you type in?
I don't believe so. It will work with that. It will work with PSDs because Lightroom supports PSD files.
InDesign and
not InDesign, the INDD or other, like basically, I believe it's whatever file formats Lightroom supports: JPEG, PNG, TIFF, PSD, and then RAW files, and then there are newer HDR files. But yeah, this is primarily for photo and video. Actually, you will notice I don't have, even though Lightroom supports video, and you can add your videos to your Lightroom or your Adobe library, cloud library. I don't at all. Video is a completely separate beast for me.
Yeah, and I would imagine it would take up a lot of your cloud storage pretty quick if you started having your movie files, video files.
Yeah. So
cool.
But all of my photos, whether it's from a camera or an iPhone, I've got them all like in 2024. These are all iPhone photos that get imported. I have a workflow of getting the photos imported into Lightroom automatically, and then I go back and delete them from my camera roll. But yeah, I absolutely do that. And you can see, there are JPEGs, there are DNGs.
So for the people who I guess the people who primarily do use this version,
hmm
would you like to show them just the differences in Lightroom Classic? Maybe just mainly like collections, because I don't see there's no collections in this version. So
Yeah, that's the thing. In Cloud, in Lightroom Cloud, the closest thing to a collection is called an album, because that's all it is. It's an album is a the receptacle for where photos are stored. You cannot store photos in folders. So what does that look like? Well, when you go, for example, to create something new with the plus, you'll see there are two options. There's create album and create folder. So folders are used for your kind of hierarchy for how you want to organize. Folders cannot contain photos. So a folder like 2024 can contain either a subfolder like this, like my month, or it can contain an album, but it cannot contain the actual photos. That's why an album, which can contain photos, and I'm sorry if I'm completely making people's eyes glaze over, but the album is the closest thing to a collection, which is what Lightroom has here. And it's almost the key difference between the Lightroom Classic is that folders can contain photos. So here, this is a folder. There's a subfolder, and then there are a bunch of other subfolders. And in each of these subfolders, you have photos. So whereas with Lightroom, you've got folder, subfolder, album.
now with the album, whatever is inside or is the album,
hmm
that is a physical photo, though, right? It's not like a virtual copy or whatever.
Correct. I mean,
It takes up physical space, right?
yeah, it's an actual receptacle for your photos.
Okay, good.
You did bring up an interesting distinction as well between Lightroom Classic and Lightroom in terms of virtual copies, and I think this is a really important thing to bring up. It's another common misconception that there's no such thing as virtual copies in Lightroom.
Right.
So really quickly, what a virtual copy is let's say here I have this photo, and this is in Classic rather, and I want to have another version of it to do some other treatment. So I would right click and where is it? Create virtual copy. And so you see there's this, it's not like it copied the photo. It's not like you have twice as much files, twice as much file size. It's just kind of a reference point, and it's a virtual copy in Classic because of that little page curl. But here, what I can do is I can say go to develop, and I don't know, I can cool this off, warm it up, and I don't know, darken it. But you can see now that there are two versions. There's this original and this virtual copy. Lightroom does not have what's called virtual copies. It has something, in my opinion, that's far better. And it's only available for cloud, not for local. It's called versions. So let's go to, let's just go to this photo here. I don't even know. This is I used a long exposure app on my iPhone. This is the Everglades down here in Florida.
Reminds me of an album cover.
Does it?
Yeah, it has like a peaceful,
I like it. Yeah. I want to find a better one, like that one. That one actually, that's not good. This one looks better. Okay, so let's say for this photo, I want to do a few things. I'm just going to click auto, and I'm going to apply an S curve. So I'll just add a little bit of contrast with an S curve, and add a little bit of gray into the darkest parts of the image. So here we go. This is and you can see it's the original aspect ratio. Mm-hmm. Now, let's say I'm like, you know what? I want to see what this looks like in a square crop and black and white. Okay, well, I can go here. In Classic, you would go ahead and you would create a virtual copy and do whatever you want to do. In Lightroom, you go to this icon here. It looks like a little backwards clock, and it's called versions. So you'll go here and there are two tabs here. You'd go to named, and I'll go and I'm going to create a version. I'm going to call this color edit and click create. So now you see there are two versions. There is the original, and then there is the color edit. And so let's say now I want to, like I said, a square crop, black and white. I'll click on original. So now we're back to the original version of the photo. I'll go back to edit. I'll click on black and white. Let's say I'll add, I'll deepen the shadows a little bit. I'll go to crop and I'll change the aspect ratio to 1:1. Let's say I, make it a little bit smaller and, rotate it, less of a Dutch tilt. And that's the image. Well, now what I can do is I can go to versions, create a version, and I could say B&W square. And so I have black and white, I've got the color edit, and I've got the original. So they don't take up twice. It's not like it takes up multiple copies.
Right.
The best part is that these versions sync to all of your devices. So no matter which device you're on a web browser, you're on your iPhone, whatever, you can queue up these versions. And even if you're on an iPhone or an iPad, you can save versions on those devices too. And they all sync. That's why I think this platform is so powerful, because and I think a lot of people don't realize that it has this functionality.
Now, do you have to go to the versions icon to see the versions, or anytime you click on that original photo, it kind of pops up and shows you or reminds you that you have versions of it?
Such a great question, Andrew. That's in my opinion, similar to smart albums or smart collections. This is a feature I've asked the Lightroom team many times. Currently, when you go into the grid view, you have all of these pieces of information on the grid. For example, you've got the file type, you've got your flag pick status, your star, you have this icon, which tells you that an edit has been applied to the image. And then you have the sync status. So this indicates that this image is synced and available offline. It does not have an indication of a version. The only way you can know if it has a version is if you go to versions. Because even do you see kind of to the right? I don't know if you can see it, but to the right of edit and crop, there's like this on the very right of the screen. There's like a little half circle. It might be hard to see, but basically that indicates that edits were made and a crop was made, but there's nothing that tells you that there are versions. And to me, that is a huge oversight, because you're right, Andrew. There's no way to indicate currently whether a photo has versions unless you double click and then you go into the edit mode and you go to versions.
Right, because you could even forget when you get mixed up with other projects. So.
Yes, and you can only this is where I do think Classic has a leg up. Notice how you have both versions or you have both of them here in the grid view. I have two edited versions here, but if I go to grid, I will only ever see the active version. So I think it would be cool if you see how when you select multiple photos and you right click and you go to group and to stack, it's the same as Lightroom. You have right there, there's an indication that there's 3 in the stack. And when you click on it, the film strip opens up and you see 3. I would love something similar. Let me ungroup this. I would love to have a similar function where maybe on this corner there would be
a V
or then a V or 2V or 3V, basically versions and how many. And then when you click on that in the film strip, you would see each of the versions. I think that would be a nice compromise. So, and I'm glad these are good questions, because what I don't want to do is give this impression that Lightroom is it's the perfect analog to Lightroom Classic, because it's not. There are things that Lightroom Classic has that some people like I need the map module, for example, or I need book. They're not, I don't know that we're going to get that. Well, there is, if you go to info view, there is GPS support, there is geodata support. So you can see where a photo was taken, and the reason why you don't see anything here is because we were in the middle of the Everglades. So there's no information, but if I go to another place, you would see the map. So yeah, I mean, it's I would say that currently Lightroom, I would say, has 80% maybe 85% of Lightroom Classic's functionality for the majority of people. Some people might be like, well, I absolutely positively need, IPTC tag support, like all of this tag support. Lightroom does not have that. I don't know that Lightroom will get that. It's just a matter of like what features will give the most bang for the buck for a user, or for the broadest group of users.
So we have a comment from Lance that might be a perfect topic or statement for you to demystify.
Sure.
So Lance says, this cloud only and not available in local puts me off. I always work local, Lightroom Classic. The delay of uploading 2,000 files to cloud each day for 3 days, along with the massive cost of having the space and only being able to work when there is internet connection.
Yeah. So a few things. One, you don't need to use cloud. Maybe it would help to tell you the things that you would lose out for if you only use local. And then you can kind of decide whether, it's worth it. The
Right.
first thing is there is no stacking functionality. So you remember I just showed you that I stacked 3 images. You see how stack is grayed out. Now, I don't know if that's because there is no catalog function here, or there's no library function with local, or it's just a matter of this will come in a future update in Lightroom. But that's one thing, you can't stack. The other thing is, notice how versions is grayed out. Versions is only available for cloud synced photos. So if you click on it, you can see here some tools and features are only available when working in cloud.
Right.
Same thing, I showed you already, the AI powered search functionality, where I just did a random search term. And that's not available. And I think for the most part, I'm thinking if there's anything else that's not available, but those are the big ones: stacking, AI search, and versions. And if I were to put it in a high priority list, I would say versions at the top, followed by AI search, followed by stacking. But you have things like keyword. You can apply keywords. The keywords sync across. Not only do they sync in local, but they'll be written into the metadata. So if you were to open that photo in Classic, those keywords would be there, as would the edits that you apply to it. But I mean, this is local. You have access to the AI powered denoise. Like, that's amazing. Here you see I can apply denoise to the photo. I can apply super resolution. I showed you earlier, I can go to photo merge and do an HDR or a pano or an HDR pano. I don't need to sync to cloud for those things. And of course, I can go ahead and export any of the photos like I would on cloud. So, it's a really robust tool that, to what Lance was saying, you don't need to sync if you don't want to. You can just take an external hard drive if you're traveling, copy your photos from your SD card or your media card onto the drive, and just browse to the full. And you have all of your editing tools. There's nothing that I can think of in terms of the editing tools here that you're missing. Like, you have things like, you have color calibration, like you have like this color calibration section. For those of you that want it, you have to click on this ellipse here and then just click on show color. It's off by default, so you want to click on that. For Classic users, the equivalent is here in the develop module at the very bottom. It's called calibration. Same sliders. There's also, for the most part, I'm talking about 99% of the tools that you have in Classic, as far as editing tools, are in Lightroom. So there's nothing that you can't do in terms of editing that you'd be missing. Like, it's got color grading, it's got point color, it's got color mixer. So yeah.
So say someone did want to jump into it, and they're open to working in the cloud, and they travel a lot and they want to use it on different laptop, their desktop, etc. How inexpensive or expensive is it to get extra storage cloud space further.
If I remember correctly, Adobe will charge you $10. So, okay, let's say you're paying $20 a month. Let's just say you have the photography plan for $19.99, which gives you, like I said, the Lightroom, Lightroom Mobile, Lightroom Classic, and Photoshop, and 1 terabyte of storage. Let's say you're like, you know what, but I have 2.5 terabytes of photos.
Right.
So here's what you would have to do. You'd have to get 2 additional terabytes for a total of 3. And if I remember correctly, I'm putting a huge asterisk here. You guys should do your due diligence, but I believe it's $10 per month per terabyte. So
for extra terabyte. Yeah.
Yeah. So if you're getting 2 additional terabytes, you'd go from $20 a month to $40 a month. Now I've brought that up to Adobe as well, to the Lightroom team, where I was like, if you want to really get people comfortable with syncing, you need to kind of reimagine what you charge, because I won't.
Bring it down.
Yeah, I mean, Lance says that's not too bad a price, and I'm glad that you said that. I'm good. Lance strikes me as someone who's reasonable, because sometimes people get really militant and they're like, I'm not paying an extra penny.
Get angry about it.
They get angry about it. And I am not employed by Adobe. You're not employed by Adobe. I don't own Adobe stock. I don't stand to benefit.
I wish I did.
I wish I did, especially back in the
way
day.
back when.
Yeah. But Andrew and I do a lot of work with Adobe, and I care about Adobe, and I see, Lance, my photos exist on a 5 terabyte drive. Okay, it's a 5 terabyte drive, but how 2 questions. How much actual files, what's the file size of your total library? And 2, oh man, Rick is kind of coming to the local New Yorker in me. Yeah, it's that state of affairs that's the cost of pizza right now, which is true. Unless you go to Costco. Costco has awesome for $10. But how much file size? And the other thing, have you gone through and done an honest to God review of your library? What I mean by that is, if I go back here to cloud and I go back to 2010, I'll go to grid view. So this is currently I have photos from 1999. That was my first year of digital. I don't even store them in Lightroom because they're so bad and they're so useless. But if I go through here, what I do is I'll go through a folder. I'll expand 2010. I'll go to January, and I'll pick a folder around Beantown. So when I lived in Boston, and I'll go through here and I'll say, do I need all of these photos? Like, for example, most of these, as you can see, are auto exposure brackets. So what I'll do is I'll go through, I'll select the brackets, and I will merge them to an HDR. And then after it's merged, I'll delete the raw files, because I just don't. Oh, this is, yeah, okay. I've selected too many of the brackets. But point is, I don't need those files. So going back to Lance's question, I find that here's the thing, and I am partly responsible. I would say most photo educators in the past decade are responsible. Scott Kelby, Matt Kloskowski, all these people, and myself, I put myself in there. Before cloud was a thing, I mean, what were we all saying? Like, digital, it's free. Take thousands of photos. Take as many photos as you want, because guess what? It doesn't cost you a dime. You run out of storage on your hard drive. Okay, you can buy a 20 terabyte hard drive for $150, $200. Now the SSD, I have an 8 terabyte SSD drive that I bought for $320. It's lightning fast. So my point is, we put people into this mindset that you can just take as many photos as you want. Who cares? And we've done this, as you can see here. And now it's time where people are like, oh, maybe this next evolution of photographers, like, I want my photos everywhere. I want to access my raw files everywhere. Cool, I get that. But now you have 133,000. And I would bet there are people who are watching this who have double that number of photos. And most of these don't need to look at these photos. What do I need this photo for?
So
Why
that's what Steven was saying. So Steven says no need for most people to upload all of their photos. Just this week or this month should
Yes.
do for most people.
Yes. Yes. Stephen hit it on the head. Like that's where that's Andrew, your question earlier, like where you can choose specific folders, you can choose specific photos within the folder, or you can just choose an individual photo. And you could sync those to the cloud. You're 100% correct.
Right.
Lance says that his current library is 3.4 gigabytes. No, terabytes, I assume. And yeah, I mean, so you would need 4 terabytes of storage, but I bet, I kind of want to do this. I want to call it a photo purge challenge. I want to see if we all went through and just kind of purged our photos, how many photos how much file size would we shed?
Right.
So yeah. But
and I wanted to say I graduated from Massachusetts College of Arts, so I lived in Boston for a bit too. So
I lived there for 7 or 8 years.
Cool.
In Brookline and then in Framingham. Yeah. But yeah, I spent a lot of time in Boston, as you can see. So, but the other thing, I didn't want to overlook, there was something, I think it was Lance who brought up earlier. Yes. The comment at 4:43, or it would be 1:43 your time, Andrew, but where he talks about only being able to work when there is an internet connection. That's a common misconception, because that is not the case with local. You could work on any of your photos from any drive, as long as that one. Where there is a legitimate concern is when you want to use cloud and you have either a bandwidth cap by your internet service provider, or maybe you have like DSL, or you're using Starlink and it's just not that fast. I get that. Like, this is not a perfect system where everything just works, but to what who brought it up? The one where like what Steven brought up. You don't need to. I did, because I'm an idiot and I'm a glutton for punishment. So I just like I have all of my. Also, to be honest, this is not like, this is for real. Archiving more than the cost of That's right, Rick. I love that where everything is in units of pizza, which is,
I mean, one way you could say the cost is, you can acknowledge that the cost is not so bad, is the fact that even if you buy, large terabyte drives, you are uploading to the cloud that's already connected to the way you work, and it's Adobe, which is not going anywhere.
correct.
Whereas your external drive could all of a sudden, out of nowhere, just start dying.
So I have this blog post article that I wrote, and it's called Common Lightroom Myths Busted. And I brought that up. Someone said, Adobe's myth 2, Adobe's cloud server storage is not a reliable backup solution. And at first I'm like, that is insane. Like this guy here, he tweeted saying that we're giving bad advice, which is, that's fine. That's totally fine. Right. But what I want to point out is the scenarios here, where the first scenario, you're a Lightroom Classic user, and you have basically all your photos on an external drive, and you even have a second external drive sitting right next to it that you do nightly incremental backups like I used to do. And even if you have a third drive with a neighbor or a family member, let's be realistic. We probably would update those once a month, maybe. And God forbid your house blows up. I mean, even if first of all, you're done. Your photos are gone because you're 100% local. But let's say you even use Backblaze, because I want to be completely like, I use Backblaze. Yep. I've got Backblaze. Have fun. Just trying to get those photos downloaded, your library, or you can pay Backblaze a good chunk of money for them to copy your backup to a hard drive to mail to you. It's just going to be a nightmare.
Right. This way, it's already organized in your app.
It's done. There's no you Andrew, you experience literally 0 seconds of downtime because I could just go to lightroom.adobe.com and access my entire library. Of course, only things that are synced to the cloud. You know, we need to be cognizant of that.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I think Lightroom's cloud. Oh man, it's already 5.
Yeah, I was gonna say.
I can't believe that. This went by way faster than I thought. Not to indicate that I thought I was going to. Yeah. But like, you know, for everyone watching, like, I don't know. I just feel like, oh, so Rick is bringing up just learning NAS drives to allow mobile use. Yeah, sure. You can use a NAS, but that also has kind of a decent upfront expense, like a good NAS drive. Like if you're using maybe Synology or something like that, it's not cheap. And it always has to be connected. You have to have power, and your unit has to be connected to the internet, which again, it could work. For me, I find this workflow to be, oh my God, some of these photos are so bad. But I find this workflow to be, it just fits my needs. And I love, this is the part I was going to bring up. And we can go a few more minutes if you're okay with it, Andrew.
Well, I was going to say, you know, real quick that I am, you know, been a diehard Lightroom Classic guy, and you know, I'm pretty cool with a lot of this stuff. I mean, it looks smooth, it looks nice. So I mean, it's not like I have any aversion to it, you know.
But that's great, and that's the thing. If you have the photography plan, which I would say most people probably do, if not, they have the full Creative Cloud plan, because you can't have Lightroom Classic without the photography plan. You can download this for free. You're paying for it already. So download it. Right. Don't even click on cloud for the first month. Just stick in local and browse to your folders that store the photos that you have in Classic, and give it a shot.
And I was thinking one cool way to work with this too is you could start off with local. You could go to, say, 3 of your most busy folders, create them as favorites, and then you could have this whole Lightroom as a focus for your 3 favorite folders only. And then you could have Lightroom Classic for like all this other stuff. So when you want like a simplified and focused way of focusing on those 3 most important folders, you go to Lightroom, and then for everything else, you go to Lightroom Classic, whatever.
Right. And let me, like, just to justify, because I know I kind of was self-deprecating on myself about having my cloud storage. This is a very real thing. And Rick, yeah, I mean, first of all,
Rick's going to buy you a pizza because you already are in Florida.
I am in Florida, but to call Chicago real pizza like Lou Malnati's or something, this is just a sacrilegious thing, and I take great offense to that as a native Brooklynite.
Right. Oh yeah, which part of Brooklyn?
I grew up in near Mill Basin, near Canarsie. Yeah, I was born in
Carroll Gardens, Brooklyn Heights, Greenpoint, and Williamsburg.
Williamsburg is where my dad had his mechanic shop before he retired.
I could walk to the Brooklyn Brewery.
Oh, nice. I like Brooklyn Brewery beer. Their lagers are really good.
Yeah.
Stop making me hungry and thirsty, guys.
Beer and pizza we're talking about.
And it's a Friday night. But the point is this, and this is, I'll close out with this. When I'm on my phone, let's say, and this is legit, this is like a real thing. Let's say I'm out somewhere, the DMV, wherever, I'm in line, the grocery store. Usually what I would do back in the day is I would just ruin my life by scrolling social media. No joke. Like I'd open up Facebook or Twitter, and it's like eating just bags and bags of empty calories. It did nothing for me. What I do now, and I do this all the time, is I'll just open up Lightroom and I'll pick a random album, and I'll just start either reviewing. I'll do a quick review process, like I'll rate them with reject flags or something, or I'll do an edit of a photo. And the best part is that anything I do, the rating or the edit, if I get home or on my iPad, it's all there. And so to me, it's just a much more, as far as like mental energy, I feel a lot better editing a photo when I'm waiting somewhere than doom scrolling on Twitter. So, yeah.
So Lance says, Saturday morning here, going out for pizza.
Oh, nice. Good morning.
Maybe he's in Australia or something.
I would assume he'd have to be for it to be morning. Let's see if he's Hamilton, New Zealand.
New Zealand. Yeah.
Yeah.
Great.
Okay. What's it like in the future?
That's right.
So
he's got shades on. The future's so bright.
He's got shades. Got to wear shades.
So yeah, this was excellent. So should I let everyone know where they can find you online?
It'd be wonderful.
Great. So yeah, it was great. And so yeah, so you can find Brian at Matiash.com. Also on his YouTube, youtube.com, Brian Matiash, and Instagram, Brian Matiash. And then just to remind everyone, the link to the recording will go to my YouTube, which is youtube.com/@DrewCav. So feel free to subscribe to that for more live events, as well as Photoshop, Lightroom, and digital art related tutorials. So that's Drew Cav on YouTube. And you might have been seeing this or watching this from a Facebook group. I run 2 of them. So come and join the AI art and digital art group. If you're not there already, facebook.com/groups, AI art, digital art, and the bigger group where you might be watching from, the Photoshop and Lightroom group, just passed, I think, 388,000. So facebook.com/groups, Photoshop, Lightroom group. And a couple last comments. Lance said, you people are living in the past. And Rick says, great job.
Thank you, Rick. Yeah, this was a blast.
Yeah, it was very good. Yeah. So
I can't believe Lance had to look at our faces
in the morning.
First thing in the morning for him. Yeah. Kudos.
Well, I'm all clean shaven, dear.
Yeah, I did shower.
So good. Thank you, says Zosh.
You're welcome, Zosh. Thank you.
Yeah. And then just one more reminder, when I update the description for the YouTube and then share the link, I will be sharing information and a link for Brian's Lightroom Everywhere course.
I forgot about that.
So if you're interested in the Lightroom Everywhere course, keep your eye on the link to the recording. And I probably will most likely go back and create a new post tomorrow in the groups just for that course. So thanks everyone for watching. Thanks, Brian. It was excellent. And we will have you again and again.
Please do. This was a blast. Thank you, everyone. And thank you, Andrew.
Great. Thanks, everybody. Have a good one.